Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sound Off Sports. I'm Mike Davis, joined by my main man, producer James Edward Barrickman the fourth, sporting the Bama gear.
Roll Tide, baby. Roll Tide.
You're a Mountaineer.
I know. Shout out to my little sister. Shout out Anna Banana. She's a senior at Alabama.
Anna Banana.
Yep.
Roll Tide.
Even though I'm glad SMU got in the playoff over Alabama.
Yeah.
This isn't like I'm not making a statement with this.
Bama got
other
out.
than a fashion statement. You know?
Hurricanes didn't get in. We're feeling it over here. I'm gonna teach you about Deacon Blues, Steely Dan.
Okay.
Call me Deacon Blues. They call Alabama the Crimson Tide.
Okay.
Call me Deacon Blues. It's a song.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I'll teach you about that a little later on. But guys, for so much to get to, a big time week when it comes to sports. Listen, Juan Soto signs the largest contract in professional sports history. A 15-year deal, leaving New York Yankees to stay in New York and play for the Mets for $765 million. It's the largest ever in professional sports history. Just to give you an idea, the career earnings for LeBron James, $531 million. For Tom Brady, $332 million. So 15 years for Juan Soto. It's a massive deal. James, when you saw this, what was the first thing that crossed your mind?
The first thing that crossed my mind as a fan of a small market Pittsburgh Pirates team is this is bad for baseball as a whole. And I don't think anybody cares other than, I'm not sure the MLB cares or if anybody cares outside of fans of small market teams. And I was going to wait to get to this, but $765 million over the course of 15 years for Juan Soto. That's more than the Pittsburgh Pirates have allocated to their entire payroll combined over the last 10 years. Same can be said for the Oakland A's. So Juan Soto is worth more than the entire Pittsburgh Pirates payroll over the last 10 years. For the last 10 years. And I think when you have that kind of competitive imbalance in your sport, that's not a good thing. But the MLB is all about trying to get these big market teams front and center. So I don't know if they care. But as a fan of a small market team, I don't like it. I've always been very much pro salary cap or salary floor in the MLB.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I can't disagree at all. It's fascinating. But here's what's so weird. Yes, the competitive imbalance, I don't love that. It's not a great look. I don't think it provides good parity. Yes, they want these big, organizations in these big time markets to be front and center when it comes playoff time and all that. But is it actually worth it? Are the Mets going to be that much better by having this guy, allocating that much money to one player where you're not spreading it around? It's still a fascinating, question to me because, yes, does one guy put you over the top in baseball? It's not like basketball. It's not like a quarterback in football. I mean, it's one dude on this New York Mets team. So the evaluation of a guy like this, it's so fascinating that $765 million can go to one guy. Is that going to make enough of a difference to put them over the top?
In baseball, like you said, it's different. It's not the quarterback in football. It's not, basketball where somebody is a great two-way player and he's on the floor for all game long. In baseball, you can pitch around one guy. You're seeing him one time every nine batters. And and Juan Soto is not that guy in the field. So, I mean, I think it will be, rather, let me rephrase this. I don't think the Mets will regret giving him this kind of money, assuming they get a pennant or two out of this. But when you look at it, they just lost to the wagon that is the LA Dodgers in the NLCS this year. So if you're going to go all in this arms race with them, then, I mean, I guess it is a move that you're going to have to make. But if you're going to go and give Juan Soto, who, again, is 26, I guess you got to go get Pete Alonso now, too, right? He's a free agent, still waiting to be signed.
It's remarkable, the amount of money that's getting thrown around. Let's hear what some people at home have to say, because what we did ask everybody at home was, will the Mets regret allocating $765 million to one player?
Juan Soto deserves $50 million a year, but 15 years is way too much time. You're going to be paying this guy till he's like near 40 years old so much money, and you're fronting all the money, unlike the Ohtani deal in L.A. Is he a little overpaid? Yes. Is he sufficiently paid? Yes. Did the Mets make a mistake? No. The Mets want to be the top dogs in New York, and they want to be the top dogs in the National League East, and they can be the top dogs in the National League East. They beat the NL East champs in the playoffs last year.
I just love there's such a lyrical nature to yes, no.
There's a great cadence to that response.
Yeah, Stage 5 Klinger. We got to give a shout out
to Matt Kling.
Matt Kling. I mean, you're going all in. And, the owner of the Mets, Steve Cohen, this is a guy, he had the dump, right? Like the AAA team and the AA team, like, he sold them off after this whole move and stuff. So He's trying to find funds and stuff, I guess, and moving around some money. It's amazing how much, it's amazing how much money people have to just give somebody $765 million.
And that's what's different. That's what's wild about baseball. It's because you asked earlier, who else are they going to be able to pay? Well, if you have an owner that doesn't care, you can pay whoever you want. You know what I mean? Like, so Juan Soto, again, that's a lot of money, right? That's almost $1 billion. But if your owner is willing, go ahead and pay everybody. That's what the Dodgers are doing.
Yeah, it's bad for the sport. That's the thing. And I'm curious, as the MLB, develops and understands that there's a changing landscape of media. There's a changing landscape of how people consume sports and live sports. They've already made so many inroads to change the game, from the pitch clock, to, taking away, giving both DH, taking away that kind of stuff. So there's been so many steps in a new direction for the MLB. I'm wondering if they're going to understand and see that, yes, it's great that big market teams have big market talent, but we need to make some moves so the rest of the league can catch up and compete.
Well, my question is, and I had mentioned this earlier, but do these smaller market teams, the Kansas Cities, of the world, when those teams do get good and they are competitive, do those ratings move the needle, as opposed to just the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, all these big market teams? If they're constantly at the forefront,
I think
is that affecting the ratings when it's just the big dogs up top all the time?
Well, I think
I would doubt
there's
it, right?
national ratings, but then there's the local TV deals. For if the KC Royals are good, then that means they're going to have a better TV deal that's a local fixture in the community. That means they're going to be selling more tickets. They're going to sell more hot dogs. So you would think there's a trickle down effect if you're not seeing talent, presented on the forefront in smaller markets. We saw, a guy like Mike Trout. It's a shame. You wonder, a guy like him, a Mickey Mantle-esque type of talent, this guy's playing in obscurity for the most of his career in Anaheim, and a guy like Shohei Ohtani gets out of there, and look what it's done for the sport for him to be a Dodger, to be in LA. I'm assuming Rob Manfred, the commissioner of the MLB, most people who are in those meetings behind those closed doors for the MLB, they're like, this is a good thing Shohei Ohtani's playing in LA rather than Anaheim. I'm sure of that. But what about for the fans? That's the issue.
You want your best players playing in the postseason, right? And so from that perspective, it is good that Shohei Ohtani is playing for the Dodgers, because for some reason the Angels, it felt like every time you turned around, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani were doing something that had never been done before in the history of the planet, and the Angels would lose by 3 or 4 runs. So I think that the MLB is glad that a guy like Shohei Ohtani is out in, on the national stage playing in the postseason with the Dodgers. But when you look at these contracts, these other small market teams, the A's, the Pirates, these teams that never spent, they're never going to be able to come near that.
It's crazy. And what is Paul Skeens worth? Like,
Paul Skeens might end up we're nearing $1 billion, right? These contracts are going to be worth $1 billion here, probably within the next 10 years, right? So you look at a guy like Paul Skeens, who I think is safe to say is a generational talent.
Yeah.
When his time is done, he's 21 years old. He has about 5 more years left on the Pirates. He'll be 26 probably, the same age as Juan Soto when he's able to hit free agency. What will that contract look like?
And what will it be different because it's a pitcher and you wear out your arm and maybe
and of course injuries
for
and
something like
God
that
forbid any injuries, but yeah.
But here's something I wanted to bring to the forefront of this conversation. In 2022, Juan Soto, he rejected a 15-year deal. He just signed this 15-year deal. In 2022, he rejects a 15-year deal for $440 million from the Nationals. So look at that. From 2022, 2 years later, 2024, almost 2025, you're getting two 15-year deals. One of them was $440 million. The other one is $765 million.
That's an insane jump. It's an insane jump over that.
Has he
that
demonstrated that much more? I mean, let's think of the stints. Since the Nationals, he was with the Nationals. He was tremendous as a rookie with the Nationals and playing those few seasons there. Then he goes to San Diego, right? Then he goes to the New York Yankees, and now he's with the Mets. Did he do, as a baseball fan, do you feel like he did that much as a player, as an athlete, for the sport of baseball and for his teams that he was playing on to garner such a tremendous contract, a jump from 440 to 765 in 2 years?
I think a lot of this has to do with his age, right? He's 26. Shohei got that contract at 29, 30.
Yeah.
I think. Juan Soto batted .288, 41 home runs, 109 RBIs this past season. When you put that up against a guy like Shohei, who, he didn't pitch this year, but was a dominant pitcher and the best bat in the league. Okay, yeah, you give that guy almost $250 million. But you look at Soto and, his numbers at the plate aren't as good as Shohei's, right? So what I'm saying is I think this contract has a lot more to do with his age, him being 4 years younger than Shohei at the time where he kind of signed that massive deal as well.
How bad do the Yankees feel right now after losing a guy like this? Because Brian Cashman, GM of the Yankees, he said they didn't want to be drunken sailors spending crazy amounts of money to retain a guy like this. How bad of a look is this for Yankees fans?
I think the biggest, gut punch for the Yankees right now is that you were so close and you come up short against the Dodgers, and one of those key pieces is now gone. He decided I think from what I'm hearing, the Yankees came up a little bit shorter than the Mets did as far as salary goes on that contract.
And I also heard there was some issues with the way in which security at Yankee Stadium and how they were handling his parents was another component.
I had read that, but it was that I wasn't sure if that was from a credible source.
I don't know, but I mean, it's fascinating once we're starting to get into money of this magnitude that things like that could come into play as well. So you never know why people make certain choices or decisions.
I don't feel bad for Yankees fans.
Well, it's hard.
I don't feel bad for Yankees fans.
Let me ask you this. Just like for Philadelphia Eagles fans, interdivision rival in the NFC East, getting a guy like Saquon Barkley who leaves the New York Giants and ends up signing a free agency deal with the Philadelphia Eagles and transforms that entire program, that whole franchise now is riding on the coattails on this wave of Saquon Barkley. We've seen on Hard Knocks, John Mara, owner of the Giants, I'm going to lose sleep if he goes to Philadelphia. If what's going to be more of a stark, revelating situation in the after effects. We've already seen what Saquon has done for the Philadelphia fan base. Is the Saquon move moving from the Giants to Philly going to be a bigger deal than the Soto, when this is all said and done, than Soto moving from the Yankees to the Mets? How do you feel?
Yeah, because they're two different sports, right? From a financial perspective, where the NFL, there's a salary cap. You can't go over a certain amount. And the MLB, spend as much money as you want, is if you have it, spend it. So when you look at a team like the Giants, who have been horrible since Eli's left, giving up, I know I feel like I'm throwing this word around a little bit too loosely today, but a generational talent in Saquon Barkley to a division rival in a salary cap sport, I think that is more of the Babe Ruth to the Yankees sort of move than more so than Juan Soto will be going from the Yankees to the Mets, because the Yankees, they have more money than God. They can go buy another, pennant caliber team year after year, because it's not a salary cap sport. And when you have more money in a non-salary cap sport, you can afford to lose players like Juan Soto because it's so easy to reload.
It's interesting stuff. Let's hear from more people at home. Once again, we asked everybody, will the Mets regret allocating all this money, 15-year deal, $765 million, allocating all that money to just one guy?
The guy is, 26, I believe. Signed a 15-year contract for $765. Okay. He did absolutely nothing to really help the Yankees get over the edge or over the hump. And the Mets go ahead and spend $760 million or $65 million on the guy. He's a bat. His defense isn't that good, but come on, we have to start making these contracts make sense. The guy batted for 288, I believe, last year at 41 home runs. Not too bad of a year, but I just don't see him being worth $765 million. He's already tricked the Padres and the Nationals.
All right, we got good calls today.
Bringing the heat.
This caller
did nothing to help the Yankees get over the hump.
Tricked the Nationals, tricked the Padres.
41 home runs, 109 RBIs. That doesn't help get a team over the hump.
It's hard. Honestly, it's hard to decipher value. It just is, because it's like, what is worth $765 million?
There's nothing worth, yeah,
on our planet, that's what's so ridiculous when you start thinking about these numbers. Years ago, we used to say, players making so much money, all this kind of stuff, they're putting the bodies on the line, all that good stuff. We get those narratives, those thoughts. But now these figures are just insane.
And they're only going up.
Right.
And they're only going up.
Like you said, in 10 years, we're going to be having players signing billion-dollar contracts. And
it's coming.
And in baseball, tell our audience, James, these are guaranteed contracts, right?
Yeah. This contract, the Soto contract, there is a player opt-out at the 5-year mark. I don't believe there is a way that the Mets can get out of this.
But the Mets, if Soto can get out of it, why would he want to?
Right.
But the Mets can't.
Yeah.
This is not like, in the NFL when you see a huge number and then you got to really focus in on the guaranteed money.
Right.
There's no financial maneuvering, I don't believe, in the MLB. You get, that's why people love playing in the MLB, is because no salary cap. Like the players.
Similar with the NHL too.
See, players love this.
Of course, yeah.
The other players, they see this. It doesn't even matter. Most of them probably think they're better than Juan Soto. But at the end of the day, they're like, this is great. More power to you. We want these.
Oh, no, this is great for players. 100%.
There's going to be a lot of Juan Soto jerseys. A lot of Mets fans are pumped up about this news, obviously.
$765 million.
It's a lot. What would you, if you got $765 million, what would you do?
Oh, other than pay off my student loans. Pay off everybody I know's student loans. I'd buy a boat. I'd buy a yacht. I'd buy a house by the ocean.
Wow.
I would be broke in 4 years.
Listen, congratulations to Juan Soto. We love it. Happy for you. As a Philadelphia Phillies fan, I'm a little worried. Don't love him now being in the NL East. But listen, $765 million. Congratulations to Juan Soto, officially the largest contract ever in professional sports history. James, as we head to break, let's hear one last thought from somebody in our audience.
$750 million. Billion with a B. What is Major League Baseball coming to? There is no way that Soto is going to be worth even half of the allocated amount at the end of the contract. All you have to think about is what happened to a lot of these guys when they got to the back half of their contract. Even Aaron Judge is getting old, and what the Yankees paid him, they're going to be eating that in a year or two. Baseball has gotten to the point where I've lost the plot. Yes, the Mets are going to regret this. They still are, eating other contracts there. It just makes a fan shake his head and say, where is this game going?
All right, welcome back to Sound Off Sports. We are joined now by Evan Wasch, the NBA Executive Vice President of Basketball Strategy and Analytics. Evan, thanks so much for joining us. All right, so listen, I'm a big fan of the NBA. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant before I wanted to do anything else with my life. But let's talk about this, because over the past few years, we have, the in-season tournament from last year. Now we have the NBA Cup, which is going to have the semifinals and finals here in Las Vegas, and we're going to get to that a little later on in this interview. But let me start with this synergy we're seeing between the NBA and Las Vegas. How real is this love affair?
I think it's fantastic for basketball. I think obviously we've had for over 20 years now NBA Summer League in Las Vegas and a real summer celebration of the future of the NBA. We've of course had USA Basketball training camp there over a number of cycles, so that the best players on the planet get to perform in the market. And of course you mentioned G League Ignite and their presence in the market the last couple of years, and now the NBA Cup is really just the next step. And we think what's unique about the NBA Cup is it's the first time that we're seeing competition of consequence, meaning the best teams in the NBA competing at the highest level for a trophy that sort of defines their early season performance. And that's not something we've historically had with USA Basketball or Summer League or Ignite. So we think it's just another unique property to bring basketball to Las Vegas. And I think it just extends that longstanding partnership we've had with the city.
Yeah, and this trend is fascinating because you're a guy who's been a part of the league now for 14 years. I'm old enough to remember when the All-Star Game, the NBA All-Star Game, came to Las Vegas, which was a big step in that direction. Former Commissioner David Stern, it was a notorious notion that he did not love Las Vegas and any cohesiveness between the NBA and Las Vegas. But now Adam Silver has made a lot of steps in this new direction. You're a guy, you've been a part of the NBA for 14 years and counting. You started as an intern, so you know really what this growth has transformed and looked like. And amongst Vegas locals here, there's so much hope that we're going to have potentially an NBA franchise coming up the pike. So this is an exciting time for Las Vegas locals. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself personally, what you've seen with this growth and this relationship, and what do you think that means for Las Vegas locals?
Yeah, so the All-Star Game predates me. I've certainly been to the last 14, but was not at the Las Vegas one. But I think it's a fantastic market for sports. You're seeing that with teams in other leagues, starting to call Vegas home. Of course, we have a WNBA team, very successful in Las Vegas. And of course, it's something that's on the table as we look towards future expansion. And Adam's talked about our priorities as we got through our CBA negotiations, as we completed our media deal, that we would turn our attention to potential expansion. And certainly Vegas would be one of the places that we could look at. But I just think expansion team or not, the ability, again, to bring our game, our competition, our players to Las Vegas and put on the shows that we can put on for that market, both the local fans and the global fans visiting, is just a really special opportunity for us at the NBA.
Of course, last year I was doing a lot of the on-the-ground coverage for the NBA in-season tournament, but now we've transitioned to a new name this year. It's going to be called the Emirates NBA Cup. Let's talk, before we get into the details, just from a naming perspective, why NBA Cup, what's the change there, and why so?
Yeah, so the reason we ended up with the in-season tournament last year was we felt like when we were creating something new, there was actually a lot of value in the literalism of calling it the in-season tournament, because that's exactly what it was, a tournament in the season. And it wasn't the catchiest name. It wasn't meant to sort of build marketing cachet, but just to let fans, media, players, teams know exactly what we were doing, right? We were adding the secondary championship that would sit within the season. It was incredibly successful. It drove outsized fan interest. The performance of teams and players in those games was incredibly intense and competitive. We saw great viewership, social engagement. All the metrics we track really went off the charts for those early season games, and it was just a great success story in year one. And not surprisingly, that attracted a lot of interest in the partnership marketplace. And so we'd already been having conversations with Emirates about a broad global partnership with the NBA, and it sort of became clear to them and us following that first iteration of the Cup that this would be a great opportunity as a real anchor property for that global partnership. And so we were thrilled to bring them on board. And of course, as part of that, it made sense for us to go through a rebranding. And Emirates has familiarity with Cup sponsorships around the world, including the Emirates FA Cup in the UK. And so we thought it made sense, along with that, to rebrand now to the much more pithy Emirates NBA Cup, which is what we'll use going forward, but obviously hope to see that same intensity independent of the name, and looking forward to the future growth as well.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how the NBA is growing. This growth that we're witnessing, it's fascinating how you guys are challenging a lot of the norms of old. We're, old NBA fans like me, we're accustomed to, the playoffs, the Larry O'Brien trophy for the team that wins the NBA finals, and a lot of these, old traditional things that we love. It's all good stuff. But now there's the implementation of so many new concepts, and the NBA Cup is one of them. Maybe perhaps you could shed a little light and tell us, from behind the scenes, the conversations that were happening, how did this even come about, the NBA Cup? How did we start moving in this direction where these conversations that were happening in back rooms have now come into existence, and we're seeing and interacting with brand new elements and ideas that the NBA is presenting to us?
Yeah, so if you look back, over the past 10 years, as you alluded to, this has been part of the conversation. I think the first concepts of in-season, or what was then called mid-season tournaments, really date back to 2009, 2010 at the league. There were media members talking about the possibility. And the reality is this wasn't a new concept within sport. It may be new among the US major professional sports leagues, but if you look at the global sports landscape, whether it's international soccer, international basketball, even individual sports here in the US, tennis, golf, racing, fighting, college basketball, all of these sports properties have multiple trophies, multiple championships that teams, players, or athletes can chase in any given calendar year. So the notion of playing a long regular season, a long playoffs, and awarding one trophy at the end of it is actually a pretty unique notion to the American Big Four sports. And we thought that presented an opportunity to really tap into what we had seen as a great success story elsewhere in the world when it comes to sports, and say, what, there doesn't just have to be one trophy to win each year for one team. There can be multiple championships. There can be multiple opportunities for players, teams to put their stamp on the season, to build their legacy, and ultimately to create narrative around, what of course is a fairly long season. And so that was the original concept. And as you said, part of it was becoming more open to innovation around season structure, right? There's generally a little bit more traditionalism in sport. And I think what we did during the COVID season, the creation of the bubble, the seeding games, the way we did that playoff bracket, coming out of the COVID season into the first post-COVID season where we had a play-in tournament for the first time, it really showed people that you can innovate the competition in the NBA and actually get some improved outcomes as a result, right? More competition at the end of the season for seeding in the play-in, more competition throughout the regular season. And that really opened people's eyes a little bit more to the concept of an in-season tournament. And that's ultimately what got us across the finish line, is to say, what, this is worth trying. This is something we think we can build for the future that ultimately just makes for better basketball for our players, teams, and fans.
All right, so now, listen, I'm an NBA junkie. I love basketball, but I think a helpful thing to do for our audience right now, if you could just kind of explain what the NBA Cup is, how it functions, and how we can interact with this as a fan, because there's a lot of interesting components from a prize pool element, all these different things at play. So maybe you could shed a little bit of light on just, explaining how the NBA Cup works so all of our fans at home really have a good understanding of what the NBA Cup is.
Sure. So it's behind me here on my background, but we've got all 30 teams competing in the Cup. They're put into groups of 5. Each team plays each other team in its group once during what we call the group play portion of the tournament. And then the teams with the best records in each of those groups are declared the group winners, and they advance to the knockout rounds along with 1 wild card team per conference. So that's 3 group winners in a wild card, 4 teams per conference, 8 teams total. And then they just play a knockout tournament. We have quarterfinals in home markets, 2 in the East, 2 in the West. And then the 4 winners of those games, they come to Vegas. And that's where we play our version of a Final Four with a semifinal doubleheader on Saturday, December 14th. And then the championship game on Tuesday night, December 17th. And the winners crown the champion and awarded the NBA Cup. There's an MVP, there's an all-tournament team, and there's cash prizing for players. So the players on the championship team get over $500,000 each. Players on the runner-up, $250,000. And then it scales down from that all the knockout teams earn some prizing. So there's incremental benefit to players from advancing throughout the Cup. And it's really just, again, heightened the competition in the early part of our season.
And it has no bearing on playoff consideration or any of that kind of stuff?
The outcome of the Cup does not, but the games themselves count as regular season games. So the group play games, the 4 games teams play, as well as the quarters and the semifinals, those are regular season games and count towards teams' standings and player statistics. The one game that sits outside of our regular season context is that championship game.
All right, I want to pose to you an analogy, just a fascinating thing that I'm ruminating on. So here's the analogy. So, let's just say you and I own a burger shop. Okay, now this is a burger shop that it's nostalgic. We grew up going there with our parents, our grandparents. It's got this sentimental value to us, this burger shop. And the older we get, we keep going to this burger shop and we love it. But we all know in order for this burger shop to survive, it's got to innovate. It's got to change with the times. It might have to bring about new ideas. So in making those innovations, sometimes that goes against the charm of that nostalgia that you remember about the burger shop. And sometimes the way that burger shop has to evolve, it could change the idea in our mind of how we remember this burger shop. And listen, you're a smart dude. You went to MIT Sloan, Northwestern. You're one of the greatest sports business minds that we have in any sports industry right now. And I'm assuming you grew up as a basketball and NBA fan, and I'm assuming you want to keep that sentimental charm that you grew up loving. We remember, Jordan in the 90s and the 80s and Bird and Magic and all these great moments and touchstones that we have about the NBA and how we remember it. So are these conscious conversations you guys are having from an NBA perspective? How do you grow and evolve and implement new ideas, but at the same time, have a happy medium and keep that nostalgic charm and the way in which we remember the NBA? How do you keep both of those things going at the same time?
Look, I think the game in part evolves on its own, right? If you picture 80s basketball, the Lakers, Showtime, Magic, you picture 90s basketball with, Jordan, Olajuwon, you picture the 2000s with the Spurs dynasties, the Shaq Kobe era in the early 2000s. Like, the game changes over time, in part because of the creativity of our teams and players. And I think our role at the league office is to just make sure that the structures, the policies, and the rules of the game keep it fresh and exciting for players, teams, and fans. And so if that means we have to tweak rules based on what we're seeing on the court, like our transition take foul rule, our non-basketball rule, like, teams and players got really smart about how to exploit certain aspects of the rule book in ways that, frankly, were not very attractive from an aesthetic perspective for our fans. And so we have to adjust to that. The same is true for the structure of our season. If we think of better ways to schedule the games, better ways to create that intense competition, it ultimately benefits everyone in the basketball ecosystem. And so it's incumbent upon us to work with our players, work with our teams, work with our business partners to think about and implement those innovations that ultimately make for a better product for the global basketball fan.
All right, well, we love it. The NBA Cup is going to be going down right here in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena. We got the semifinals happening on Saturday, December 14th, and then on Tuesday, December 17th, that's when the championship is going to go down for the NBA Cup. Evan, we thank you so much for your time. Real quickly, before we let you go, any last words that you want to say to our audience?
Just excited for year 2 of the Cup and hopeful for some great competition for the fans in Vegas.
Okay, real quickly, last thing, I lied. I got to ask you one more thing because I do my research. I saw you grew up on a horse farm. Was this like a Hoosiers situation? Did you grow up shooting your first basketball shot against, your first shot, was it against like a barn that your dad recreated as a backboard? Or how did this work? I'm imagining a Hoosiers type of situation.
It had nothing to do with horses, but we had a gravel driveway. So it certainly made dribbling very difficult. So I worked much more on my shot than my handle. And that probably did not help me in later years as a basketball player.
All right, Evan, thank you so much again. One of the greatest sports business minds we have on the face of the earth. We thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Guys, NBA Cup. There's this synergy between Las Vegas and the NBA. You got to love it. We're still hoping for that NBA franchise down the road. But right now, you can see the NBA Cup right here at T-Mobile Arena, Saturday, December 14th. And yes, Tuesday, the championship of the NBA Cup is going to be going down at T-Mobile Arena, Tuesday, December 17th. We'll be right back on SOS right after a short break. All right, welcome back to Sound Off Sports. Mike Davis here with James Edward Barrickman IV. James, big week locally here in Las Vegas. Head coach Barry Odom has left the UNLV football Rebels and has accepted a coaching job at Purdue. Now, timeline of this is fascinating.
Yeah.
They lose the Mountain West championship game against Boise State 21-7
on a Friday.
Last Friday.
Right.
By Sunday morning, breaking news, this guy is now going to be coaching the Boilermakers, going to Purdue. By Tuesday, he's doing the introductory press conference and all that good stuff.
He's long gone.
To me,
he was in West Lafayette Sunday evening.
I know West Lafayette. I almost took a job in West Lafayette. A very beautiful place. Indiana, Midwest. Gotta love the Midwest. But this is where my mind's at. If I'm a UNLV football Rebel fan, if I'm a player, if I'm a part of this program, my concern is that this guy had to be considering taking up mental brain capacity to be auditioning, interviewing for other jobs, all in the meanwhile trying to prep his team to win the Mountain West Championship for the opportunity to get into the first ever college football playoff, which is going to have 12 teams. So you're telling me this guy had to compartmentalize and balance both of these things at once. I'm just going to say it, James. I don't like it.
I don't think anybody likes it, but that's just the world we live in. This is how it works in college football.
I don't want to live in this world. Why can't we live in a world where Purdue and that athletic director's thinking, you know what, do your thing. We want to evaluate coaches. We want to be on a coaching hiring spree with guys who are focused and fixated on what's important. And then there's time to, make room for these types of things after the fact. I mean, this is such it's a hurtful thing, I think, if you're a member of this program, if you're a player in this program. I think Chuck Wagon, Charles Williams, he came on Cincinnati Beat. He said something fascinating. He said these young guys, they're more loyal to the coach than they are to the program. A lot of these kids when they're recruited out of high school. So now you have a coach who's just up and leaving for the next best thing, and I get it. He deserves it. He turned around this franchise, this program in 2 years. I mean, it's a remarkable thing that he did and he accomplished, and he should go out there and get his $7 million a year, and that's a perfect thing. But can't that come after you're about to make history?
Purdue doesn't have that kind of time to waste. Let's say they waited to even get interviews started. I don't know how long that process takes. It's probably, I assume it's like a 2-3 week process where they're doing interviews. Purdue doesn't care about UNLV football. What UNLV has going on has no bearing on Purdue football and that athletic department there. So Purdue, to them, what matters is getting this next head coach in there as quickly as possible and rebounding for next year. And so when you're Barry Odom and you're a guy who's looking to take the next step in your coaching career, it's either, you focus on UNLV or you miss out on potentially, the next step of your career.
What about tampering? What about something like, couldn't there be regulations or formalities constructed by the NCAA to say, listen, like between this period of time, there's no coaching, conversations going on. There's no hiring conversations happening until after a certain period of time. Because I think that would just make, I think that would be a great thing for the sport. But beyond that, thank God for NIL, because now for a situation like this is when, to me, NIL is something that's super important, because you feel bad for some of these kids who, if they believed in this guy, they believed in that program, they signed because they wanted to play for Coach Barry Odom, they should have the ability to do some maneuvering themselves.
100%. And this is, one of those things where the transfer portal is a good thing. This is one of the good things about the transfer portal, is many issues as it has. This is one of the good things. So, I'm with you where you're saying, can there be parameters? Can there be, a timeline for the hiring process, for the coaching carousel, where you can't reach out to a coach, or a coach can't reach out to a program until after that season for that program is over, or, maybe you have to wait until after the college football playoff. I don't think the schools would like that are looking to do the hiring, but when you're a school like UNLV and you're losing the best head coach you ever had, I'm sure they would have loved to have those kind of parameters.
And we posed a lot of these good questions on Cincy Beat. I definitely compel you guys to go check that out on our YouTube page, and make sure you check that episode, because we really do a great deep dive with Ray Brewer, Mike Ramala, and Chuck Wagon. But let's go to our audience for the first time here. So the question we asked is Coach Barry Odom making a mistake by leaving UNLV football?
This is from Ray Arbasu on Facebook. He says, he threw away the Mountain West Championship game. He was already on his way out. Purdue won't and can't compete with Ohio State or Michigan. Just like the rest, it's not about where you're at and your players. It's about money, plain and simple. So he's with you.
And Ray, that's a great point. Thanks so much for that comment. This is what I want to say. How many times have we seen this same story in professional sports with coaching, and that coach loses? That's all I'm asking.
Where he has a foot out the door?
When they have a foot out the door. How many times do they have the foot out the door, but they win that game? I never see it. Like that, to me, I'm going back to the Super Bowl when my Philadelphia Eagles were in the Super Bowl. You had an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator taking head coaching conversations and leading that whole process up into the Super Bowl, right? They're going on these job interviews. Jonathan Gannon is not preparing for the, defensive football game. He's not thinking about plays. Even if he's spending a little bit of his time on that, he's also got this major thing, a major life event occurring in his life that is competing for mental capacity. It's competing for his attention. So when a Jonathan Gannon leaves, they lose that Super Bowl. When Shane Steichen leaves and goes to the Indianapolis Colts, they lose that game. I'm just asking everybody out in the audience, I'm asking you, James, how many times does that coach, who's got to compartmentalize and he's weighing both of these things in his head, how many times do we see that coach actually win? Because I feel like every time it happens, they lose.
I will disagree with you here. I don't think Purdue was on his mind, obviously, and he was interviewing for the Purdue job leading up to the Mountain West Championship game. There's no question about that. And yeah, it's in the back of his mind as he's trying to get his team prepared. But if you watched the game, it wasn't the defense that lost in the game, and that's Barry Odom's background. He's a defensive guy. Defense shut out Boise State in the second half. It was the offense. It was, and I hate to put the kid on blast. Haj Malik Williams played his worst game that he played as a Rebel. So what I'm saying here is that game wasn't lost because Barry Odom had a foot out the door on his way to Purdue. If you watched the game and, are taking into account what actually took place during that game, it wasn't Barry Odom interviewing with Purdue and going through the motions leading up to the Mountain West Championship game, because the team was ready, at least on the defensive side of the ball, and that's where his expertise lays.
I get that point.
I don't agree with it, and I'm with you. I wish there were some sort of timeline where, these interviews could take place and these hires could happen, but there's not.
Yeah. And one of the big questions we posed on Sin City Beat that I'm going to pose now is, what happens if they win this game? Is Barry Odom forced to stay? Because it would be a bad from an optics standpoint. The look would be awful to just be out the door and not coach in this 12-team college football playoff because you already got a deal signed, sealed, delivered with Purdue. Right. So now if they win this, that's why I'm saying when you start thinking the arithmetic and how this all has to be calculated, it's unconscious stuff. I'm not talking about he didn't go into the game trying to lose.
No.
He didn't go into the game not caring. I'm just saying, think about how this is real life. For us, we're just talking sports. Right. For him, he's moving his family. He's moving to a different state. He's got other things on his mind. So all I'm saying is you don't think that would weigh on your head? You don't think, of course there's other things that are now top of mind with him, and maybe there were, maybe there would be more time to, hey, sit down. If I'm not taking a coaching job interview with Purdue, maybe I have an extra 45 minutes to sit down with Haj Malik and get his mind right so he's best prepared to start in this game. There's so many different elements at play.
I don't think Barry Odom trying to getting an interview at Purdue has any bearing on the outcome of the Mountain West Championship game. That Boise State team is a very good football team. Is the best in the Power Four. Obviously, they have a Heisman candidate. That roster is better. They are a better program. And when you think about it, UNLV was a year ahead of schedule, right?
Yeah.
If Barry Odom stays, maybe they can compete with a team like Boise State on the road on the Smurf turf. But Boise State, that team is a wagon in the G5. So I don't think, even if Odom was planning on staying, I don't think they win that football game. Is it weird that he took the first offer, it seems, on the table? And is it weird that, Purdue, the choice to go there, it's not even so much the money leaving UNLV. He wants to get to the Big Ten. Is it weird that it was the first one that came to him and it's I'm going straight to Purdue, an organization that's not super relevant, had 2 wins this year? I mean, in a lot of ways, like Ray Brewer was saying on Sin City Beat, it's kind of like a good move for him because it's a win-win. You can only go up. You can't screw anything up at Purdue. It's already been screwed up. So he goes there, and it's a win-win situation for him with all the money he's collecting. But do you think it's strange that he opted and jumped for that gig as a guy who used to be in the SEC with Missouri, all that kind of stuff? I'll say this. When you look at his increase in salary, he's going from 1.5 this past year he made at UNLV, $1.5 million a year, to $6 million his first year at Purdue, and that goes up to $7.5 million. So that is at most a $6 million increase in your salary. You'd be an idiot to say no to that if you're looking out for your family. Now, is it a little short-sighted? I could hear that argument, where you jump at the first opportunity in the Power Four for a school like Purdue in the Big Ten that is buried at the bottom of all those programs. You got to compete with Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Oh, yeah, and now USC, Washington, UCLA, Oregon. You are at the bottom when it comes to resources, when it comes to money. This is a really, really hard place to win, but I think it speaks to the confidence that Barry Odom has in himself and the staff that he's trying to bring with him.
Let's hear what some people are saying at home, James. We posed to everybody, is Coach Odom making a mistake by leaving UNLV football? What did people at home have to say?
This is from Janet Hubert on Facebook. She says, look, those against his move. Every Pop Warner coach wants a high school job. Every high school coach wants the college job, and every college job wants the chance at the pro job. It's the way of their progression. Be proud of him and what he did for the UNLV program, and wish him much luck.
Yeah, I'm not hating on him. I appreciate what he did for this program. Tremendous historic turnaround. First time ever in UNLV football history that this team was ranked this season.
This has been awesome.
It's been a great ride.
This has been awesome.
The sadness, I think, is inherently, why couldn't UNLV come up with that money? I think it is a question that some people might be thinking.
They asked Eric Harper, the AD at UNLV, this question in that press conference following the Barry Odom departure. He laughed when asked, could they have made a qualifying offer or something similar? And he kind of laughed, and he was like, there's no way. The Big Ten's pockets are too deep, is what he said. So UNLV, they're not. We got to understand what UNLV is, You're not competing with the Big Ten from a money standpoint. It's just not happening.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It was a great ride. I mean, this is a team that, had a historic turnaround these past 2 years. We remember the Carlos Arroyo years. This is a completely different scenario. And, it's sad. It's sad to see that a lot of this momentum, a lot of this positive progression that this program has seen is now going to be potentially stunted, and we're hoping that momentum can be carried over.
What to be back on the move from Barry Odom, of course, from a money perspective, it's a no-brainer, right? But when you're looking at career longevity, you were fired from Missouri after, I think it was 3 or 4 seasons. He had about a 500 record there. Goes to Arkansas as a DC, gets hired at UNLV, flips the program on its head, makes it immediately a contender in the Mountain West. Now, this coaching cycle for the coaches, as far as what programs were available and open to go to, it wasn't great. Right, so he jumps at this Purdue job, and my question is Purdue in that salary? Is it worth it going there if it potentially stops you from getting to your next stop, which I assume is probably back at Arkansas or Mizzou in the SEC? If he fails at Purdue, how does that affect the rest of his career?
Right.
And is Purdue worth that risk despite the money they're giving you? So you could have stayed another year at UNLV for $1.5 million or probably more with whatever incentives, and taken another look next coaching cycle at at maybe some better programs on the horizon. Just things to think about, but I think I'm obviously rooting for him. Incredible job what he did at UNLV. It was so much fun being able to go to those games and cover they're having real college football program issues.
Yeah.
Now which has never happened. So I'm rooting for the guy. I'm going to be following him for the rest of his career. I hope he can get it figured out at Purdue, but I am nervous because that is just such a hard place to win. It's the hardest mop-up job maybe in the P4 right now.
I think that's a smart way that you're putting it. It's kind of like, a guy who's never been on a date before, who has never been romantic with a girl, and he finally gets that opportunity. Now he goes out there and he's dating and he's getting his heart broken and he's putting himself out there, and it might not be the news that he wants to hear, but he's living the life. He's
right.
being a part of going out and being on dates and getting his heart broken. So now it's like, we're a real football program. We're somebody who can be a fan of UNLV football and say, we actually know what it feels like to be in the college football conversation.
And I think a lot of what people are saying is, why is everybody acting like Barry Odom's the only good football coach there
That's
is in
what
the
Ray
country,
kept
right?
saying on Sin City Beat.
Yeah. And we had a respondent say the same thing. I think what Barry Odom did, and Eric Harper echoed this in his press conference, he said, Barry Odom made this a very, very attractive job. There are resources here in Vegas, and we had been saying this during Barry Odom's tenure. Why can't UNLV be a football powerhouse in the era of NIL? They play in a great stadium. They play in maybe the nicest football stadium in the world. They have the nicest facilities when it comes to football in the Mountain West. You're in Vegas.
Yeah.
This should be
I think
this should be an NIL.
I think a lot of this, to be honest, I think a lot of this is that people that are in the position of Barry Odom, players, coaches, executives, they want to be in the Big Ten. They want to be
competing at the highest level.
They want to be in the SEC. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot of talk. People think with the way NIL stuff is going, with the way college football playoff looks now, there's a decent chance that there isn't going to be an NCAA. And there's going to be all these fractions of what this looks like. And the SEC and the Big Ten are going to, do something.
Go off and do their own
thing.
From the NCAA.
So there's, I think this says less about UNLV and more so about the Mountain West. To me, that's what I think a lot of this looks like. It's not that not being with UNLV isn't a good thing. We have great facilities. It's a big market. It's a big name. It's a nice thing. It's more so like going to West Lafayette is a smaller thing than Las Vegas.
Well, here you go. This is David Shear on Facebook. He says, I was in Indiana once. No amount of money could get me to return, especially from Las Vegas. And so, of course, I wouldn't move to West Lafayette from Vegas. You wouldn't move to West Lafayette from Las Vegas. But we're not coaching football in Mountain West to go to a Big Ten school.
And it's a great...
So I agree with what you're saying. This says a lot more just about the conference that UNLV plays in rather than UNLV.
And it's striking because you would think coaching here in Las Vegas with deals, and we always talk about this in the back office, with the casinos and the amount of money that's coming through this. I mean, we just had F1 here, the Super Bowl. I mean,
it's the sports capital of the world, right?
So you would think there's some kind of workaround, some way to get this guy the money that he deserves. And it's just puzzling. It's coming from West Lafayette, Indiana is where he's going to go get paid. But it's really conference-based, and that's where a lot of this, money and these deals and the college football landscape is emanating based upon these power conferences.
That's where all the money's at. That's where all the TV contracts are at. Any competitor, these kids, that's what, there's a reason all these 5 stars, these 4 stars, they're going to SEC and Big Ten programs. These head coaches that come up through the FCS, through the G5, they want to get to the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, Kalen DeBoer left Washington after making the college football playoff to take the job at Alabama. It speaks to, and Washington's no slouch. They're a good football program. So I think it just speaks to the money that is coming from the Big Ten, the SEC. You look at the best players in the NFL right now. Where are they all from? They're all from SEC schools. Jamar Chase, LSU, Myles Garrett, A&M. The list goes on and on. It's the highest level of college football, and any competitor, coach, or player, that's where they want to be, and you can't blame them for that.
As we're wrapping up this block, let's get one more response from the good people at home. Did Coach Odom make a mistake by leaving UNLV football?
This is Dan Murray on Facebook. He says, loyalty goes both ways. You want a top 25 coach, then pay him like one.
Make sure you tune in to everything we got going on at Silver State Sports and Entertainment on YouTube. Make sure you check us out on YouTube TV as well. We got a bunch of different shows covering everything from UNLV football, Raiders, Vegas Golden Knights, all that good stuff. For myself and James Edward Barrickman, the fourth, we'll see you next time here in the den at Fox 5 Studios. Until next time, have a great rest of the week, guys. We'll see you next time.